So we'll discuss some Inyane Eretz Yisrael, as it's always appropriate, but this past week was Yom HaAtzmaut, Israel Independence Day, so we'll speak about some Eretz Yisrael, some Kedushas Eretz Yisrael. In fact, it ties into Sfira as well, because that's the Rambam Shita. As we mentioned, the Rambam Shita is Sfira Sa'omer, even Bizman Hazeh is a mitzvah min HaTorah. And at first glance it seems to be, and Rov Rishonim, as we mentioned, disagree. The issue at first glance seems to be that whether the mitzvah of Sfira Sa'omer and Karban Omer, are they one mitzvah, are they connected, or are they independent? So if they're connected, so we don't have a Karban Omer anymore, so therefore Sfira is only D'Rabbanan. And Pashas, the Rambam who holds Sfira Omer is D'Oraisa today, must hold that Sfira is independent of the Karban. That's what one would say. However, the problem is, the Rambam, when he talks about the laws of Sfira Omer, talks about in Hilchos Tamidin Musafim. He talks about it in Hilchos Karbanos. So the question is, so obviously the Rambam holds that Sfira is linked to Karban, and he still says it's D'Oraisa. So how could it be? We said if it's independent, we understand why it's D'Oraisa. If it's linked to the Karban, we understand why it's D'Rabbanan. How could the Rambam say it's linked to the Karban and still be D'Oraisa? So that's a famous shtickle from Rav Chaim Soloveitchik. He points out that because the Gemara in Menachos Makvav seems to say Sfiras Omer is only a Zeichel Mikdash, and Pashas everyone holds D'Rabbanan. So how could the Rambam go against the Gemara? So Rav Chaim explains, really it's a machlokas hasugya. It's really this Gemara Menachos isn't a libid dehilchot. So we have a famous machlokas. We have many disputes, but one regarding kedushas hamikdash. There's a discussion. There's the one machlokas regarding kedushas haaretz. That'll be another shiur in terms of the mitzvahs hatuyas baaretz, bizman bayisheni, bayis rishon, in terms of that. But there's another machlokas, kedushas hamikdash. Whether today, even though we no longer have a Beis HaMikdash, does the Kedusha remain? So everyone agrees, I'll get to in a second, but so the Rambam writes the Kedushas HaMikdash applies even Mizman Hazeh, because Hashchina Eino B'Teila. You can knock down the walls, but you can't take away the divine presence. And the Rabbi doesn't actually say there's no Kedusha, all he says is there's Ein Lo Kares. There's no kares today, and some assume that the Rabbi says it's mutter. So that's a discussion what exactly the Rabbi's Shita is. But the Rambam clearly holds the Kedushas HaMikdash applies today as well as it did during time of the Beis HaMikdash. Perhaps some make a distinction that if according to the Rambam that the Kedushas HaMikdash applies today, so maybe you have a chiyuv to bring a karban. So we'll see that even though Makriv and Achal Pi She'ein Lo Bayis, maybe that's only a Rishus, not a Chova. But either way, the Rambam writes that Sfiras Omer is D'Oraisa today, and he connects it to the Karban Omer. So how could that be? So Rav Chaim explains is because since we paskin Kedushas HaMikdash applies even Mizman Hazeh. So really, in theory, one could bring Karbanos even Mizman Hazeh. One could bring a Karban. Why don't we? Because we don't have the big day kahuna, we don't know exactly the makam of his Mizbeach is, kohanim atmeya, many different technical factors, but fundamentally, we could bring a karban today. So the Rav Chaim writes, what was the halacha bizman Beis HaMikdash Kayam? We counted Sfira at night, that's what Tamimas Tiena means. Bahag has his own chiddush, but Tamimas Tiena means you count at night, you need a full day. So, you counted Sfira at night, and you brought the Karban Omer the next morning. So even when we brought a Karban, the counting wasn't dependent on the Karban B'Poel. It wasn't dependent on one physically bringing the Karban, because we actually counted before we even brought the Karban. So what's the mitzvah of Sfira D'Oraisa? You count in the night of Sfira on the condition, or in theory, that you're going to bring the karban, you count now, thinking you're going to bring the karban tomorrow morning. So too now. The Rambam holds one can bring karbanas today. So when we count svira, yeah, we have a mitzvah to bring karbanas today. Tomorrow morning I can't bring one. That's a technical problem, not a fundamental problem. And therefore that's what the Rav Chaim says in the Rambam, that the Kedusha Hamikdash applies even Bizman Hazeh, and that's how the Rambam could hold it's linked to the Karban Omer and still be a Din Daraisa. Let me just point out, the whole discussion between the Rambam and Rabbi is regarding the Kedushas of Eretz Yisrael. Then we have a machlokes whether the Kedusha applies Bizman Hazeh, Trum Laisa D'Rabbanan, that's one thing. But there's another aspect that's what the Briskers call, others call the Shem Eretz Yisrael. There's certain mitzvahs which are totally in the Kedushas Haaretz, but even independently of that, even if you assume right now there's no Kedushas HaMikdash, there's no Kedusha Eretz Yisrael is holy anyway, because it has the Shem Eretz Yisrael. It was the land of the Avos that the Avram came in, and the land, the fact that it's our homeland, that by itself gets it. And that's what the Rishonim talk about in the beginning of Gittin also, that even though there might not be, and perhaps that's a discussion, is the mitzvah of Yishav Eretz Yisrael. Does it depend on the Shem Eretz Yisrael? Does it depend on the Kedusha Eretz? That's why the Gemara in Sota, Moshe was a mitzvah. Moshe had stress. He wanted to go to fulfill the mitzvahs of Tluyas Ba'aretz. And why? Why did he want to go? He wanted to fulfill the mitzvahs of Tluyas Ba'aretz. So we see that the reason why, that's a discussion. So why didn't the Gemara say he wanted to fulfill the mitzvah of Yishav Eretz Yisrael? So that's a discussion in the Rishonim, Achronim, how you learn that Gemara in terms of, was that a given? Of course he wanted to fulfill the mitzvah of Yishav Eretz Yisrael, but in addition he wanted to fulfill the mitzvah of Tluyas Ba'aretz. So that's a discussion there. That's where the Ritva in the beginning again they get into the different parts of Eretz Yisrael. So there might be a Shem Eretz Yisrael without a Kedusha Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael is holy even if it doesn't have a Kedusha. It's something special. You can't say the Makam HaMikdash is like any other place in the world. Even if you assume not like the Rambam. Even if you assume Kedusha HaMikdash is Bato, you still can't say, and you can't say Eretz Yisrael, even if there is no Kedusha now, you can't say Eretz Yisrael is like any other land, it's a special land as well. So this gives us a chance to speak about Eretz Yisrael. So I was asked to speak about the significance of the Israeli flag. So actually I saw in the Nefesh Harav, that's Rav Shechter's Sefer, when he wrote about the Rav, I'm not sure what number it is, the first one, second, there are a couple out now, maybe even three. So in one of his shtickles, Rav Shechter writes that when the Rav was, I guess, giving shiur to a Mizrahi crowd, maybe it was in Mariah, where she gave shiur all the time, all over, and one of the people asked Rav Soloveitchik, is there any halachic significance to the Israeli flag? Is that a new Zionistic thing? Is that a new thing that started, I don't know if it was that they had it in 1948, but whenever the flag actually began, is that a new thing? Or does that have something that there's some, halachic significance that we could trace back further? So first the Rabbi answers by saying the only time we find the golem, the only time we find flags in the Torah, that's in the beginning of Parashas Bamidbar, the golem, and that was what we call a horasha. That was a mitzvah for a certain time period for the Jews who traveled in the desert. They had to know where to go, on what part of the ark, on what side they were on. It was a special law for the Dor HaMidbar, like the halacha of collecting the booty from Mitzrayim. It was a special halacha for the Jews in Mitzrayim. Kriyas Yamsuf. Those are horashas at specific time periods. So the golem, there's no significance with Doros. That was only a special din. It was much more, it might have been a level of Kedusha to it, but it was much more pragmatic to how to know where to stand, but that's it. But we don't find anywhere else the golem. So therefore, is there no significance to the flag? So Rav Soloveitchik wanted to suggest perhaps there still is a significance to the flag. and he wanted to compare it to the following halacha. There's halacha in Judaism and many religions, but there's halacha in Judaism of burial. Kavar tikbarenu bayom mahu. Tell Jason the double lashon. Kavar tikbarenu bayom mahu. That you have to be buried, and we have to be buried on the same day. And that's why in Yerushalayim you have to be buried. You can't leave a body overnight. The special kedusha of Yerushalayim, etc. And in general, we try to bury someone as quickly as possible, with one exception. It's all about kavod hamei. So if the family is far away and it's going to take them a little while to get here, so if they're on vacation in Hawaii and they say they're not going to be back for a month, we don't wait for them. But if they're going to travel back, they have to come from Israel. It's going to take a day. They have different communities have different minhagim. How far you have to wait. You always have to balance bizoi hameis when you're degrading the mace to cover that the family is coming, and therefore the Mishnah tells us in Sanhedrin, al kavod hameis, one could push off the burial until the family gets there. So we believe in burial, and the halacha is every Jew is the same, whether you're a millionaire, a billionaire, you're afflicted with poverty, everyone gets the same burial. You get buried in the same tachrichim. You get buried in the same shrouds. In contrast to other religions where they have wakes, where people get dressed up, in Judaism we want you to remember the person when they're in the vitality, when they were living, when they were doing mitzvahs, not going around, observing them, putting stuff on them, and keeping them and observing them. We don't view the dead we don't view the mace after the dead. Maybe a family member just came back, they want a last minute to see, but in general, once we put the body away, we don't usually let anyone see it anymore. So tachrichim, and I'm often asked, what about, which coffin should I use, Rabbi? Like, should I, I'll honor to my parents that the funeral home wants to sell me the $30,000 coffin. Or should I get the $2,000 coffin? I'm making up prices, whatever they might be. And I tell them like this, really, Judaism says no coffins. Really, the Jewish view, as they do in Israel today, is you bury them, tachrichim, right into the ground. Because the quicker the body decomposes, the quicker the atonement. And therefore, you go directly in the ground, you'll decompose quicker. Because of minhag North American law, dina machus dina, we have no choice. Again, it's not against halacha. In other words, the Ramban writes, you are allowed to bury someone in a coffin in the ground. You can't just bury someone in a coffin and leave them on top of the ground. But if you take the coffin and you put him in the ground, that's also considered halachically burial. And that's why our minhag is, we take some earth from Eretz Yisrael, we put it into the coffin, or we make holes on bottom of the coffin and try to fulfill from earth to earth, from offer to offer. And therefore, I tell them, you don't have to spend $30,000, you buy the simple wooden coffin. In fact, you shouldn't be taking a metal coffin because metal doesn't decompose, or if it does, it takes a lot longer. And we want the body to decompose. You take the simple pine coffin, and therefore that's giving kavod to your family. You're a family member. These are decomposed quicker, and his atonement will be quicker as well. So whether it's burial in the coffin or it's tachrichim, all the tachrichim are the same. There's one exception to the rule. But we don't bury someone in a coffin, in tachrichim, in shrouds. And it's halacha born in Shulchan Aruch. I haven't actually checked with Chevra Kadishas whether that's still the minhag today. I'm assuming it is, but I like verifying it, usually like speaking to the people who actually do it and see what it is. But there's halacha that someone who is murdered and they have the blood-stained clothing all over, so instead of, you do not put him in tachrichim, you bury him the way he is. Obviously you make other preparations for the burial, but you don't put the shrouds on, you bury him with the blood stain. And the concept being is, we want to oreh rachamei Hashem. We want to stir up God's mercy, that Hashem kind of nimkom dam, of Hashem will revenge the blood of one who did it, the anti-Semites, whoever, And I'm assuming, I'm just thinking a lot, what about all the bomb victims in Israel? Like those, obviously if there's nothing left of them, I mean, but in terms of or those who are killed, and then they have, so I'm not sure if that's the minhag on that, could be. And then in terms of that, and that's but that's the halacha brought down in Shulchan Aruch that you want to make more rachamim. In fact, I heard, I haven't seen it inside, but I read it. Rabbi Blech, he used to teach with me at YU and in the JSS program. I don't know if you know him or not. And he wrote a couple of books. He wrote, Svarim, and I think one was Deed versus Creed. He has a lot of different books, and one he put out, I think, one of the Idiot Guides on Judaism. So actually, I think I was reading it about Holocaust, about something on the Holocaust. I was looking up stuff for Yom HaShoah, and he has in one of these footnotes, he doesn't give a source, but he writes, I'm quoting him, that someone asked Rav Moshe, I guess somehow this person who went through Auschwitz or maybe one of these concentration camps, they survived, and then they asked to be buried instead of the Tachrichim, they wanted to be buried in their their Auschwitz uniform. And apparently, again, this is all I'm reading in this book, and apparently Rav Moshe said it was okay. So apparently, because the person, so it's the same type, assuming it's true, that it's the same type of thing, that you want him over, that basically, that he's paskening that, kind of like, I already went through type of Gehenna already, and also I guess it's the same concept being taken to come on the Nazis and all the anti-Semites, the same type of so it's not, we do have cases where you are not buried in Tachrichim, even though this isn't exactly the case we're normally talking about is when you actually kill B'Shatz Maisa. Here it's the same concept of being Ma'orer, so it's not so, apparently, according to this, Reb Moshe said it was okay. So either way, but whether it happened or not, it just reminds me it's the same concept that we do think we want God to Mo'er Rachman. So that's the halacha. So that's the halacha in Shulchan Aruch. If someone is murdered, you bury them with the blood on their clothes in order to stir up Rachman Hashem. So Rav Selevan said, this is the concept of the flag, he thinks. And I guess in 1948, right before they were giving us the land, so I guess there was a time, I'm not a bucky in this, but this is what I seem to say in Nefesh Harav, that I guess the last couple of hours, it was wherever, as much as they could, so to speak, put the flags down. I don't think it was literally they had Israeli flags yet, but wherever as much ground as they could get, that's what the borders of Eretz Yisrael were going to be. Wherever you could take over by whatever the time was, and this time, that's how much you're going to get. So obviously when they heard that, the Jewish soldiers, Jewish people went ahead and they tried to conquer more land. And of course, they were fighting the Arabs, and obviously Jews were killed during this time, and Jews they were killed even after, the moment they announced the state. But therefore, so that's what Rav Soloveitchik says, the flag represents the Mesiras Nefesh of all those Jews during that time who try to put, so to speak, the flag down and try to enlarge the boundaries of Eretz Yisrael from that point, from the British, from the UN point of view, and that's what the flag represents. All the Jewish lives that sacrificed for the land of Israel. Therefore, it takes on a certain type of level of maybe Tashmisha Kedusha. Of course, I don't think the Rav takes it so far that if Israeli flag rips, you bury it in the cave. I don't think he meant it that way. Again, it's just it's a machshava statement. And I'm reading from Nefesh Harav, so I don't think he took. But the concept that even though, so basically, the way I'm understanding it anyway is that basically, pi halacha, obviously there's no halachic significance to having a flag. I mean, it might be national value, and everyone has, but he thinks in terms of machshava, there might not be, real halach, but in terms of machshava, it takes on a certain, whether it's halachic significance or hashkafic significance, that the flag isn't meaningless, but when we have the flag up, it shows the mesiras nefesh of all the men, women, and children who have given up their lives, that they continue to give up their lives for us to have Eretz Yisrael. So in that sense, the flag has meaning. If every time you look at the flag and you see all the mesiras nefesh of all the Jews from even well before, but from even 1949 on, then the flag takes on a certain type of significance. And in fact, that's why Rav Selevan explained as well, not in this shtickle, but I heard him in his name, the same concept. That's why we have Yom HaZikaron right before Yom HaAtzmaut. Why do we have Remembrance Day? Remembering the soldiers and all the civilians, everyone who's given up their life for Eretz Yisrael. We have a very big event in Eretz Yisrael, but we have something here as well. And then the next day, we go into Yom HaAtzmaut. Why do we have to mix the two celebrations, or not two celebrations? Why do we have to mix the Remembrance Day with the Happy Day? Let's separate the two. Let's make Yom HaZikaron, pick another day, a couple of months from now, and then pick Yom HaAtzmaut. Why are the two linked together? So Rav Selevan explained, because we know in Judaism, and I'm just elaborating on it, is we know the power of contrast. To fully appreciate anything in life, you have to know the opposite. To fully appreciate light, you have to know what darkness is. To fully appreciate eyesight, we appreciate eyesight as much as we can, but someone who was once blind and now can see, it takes on a totally different significance of someone who couldn't walk, now they can walk. Someone who went through Makas Choshech, or someone was in the hole in Alcatraz, and it was real dark and you couldn't see anything. You walk out, it's a totally different appreciation. And that's what, in fact, we just celebrated Pesach not too long ago. So that's what the Machloek is Rav and Shmuel, but the Gemara says, Matkel b'Genus. Everyone agrees to the principle. They argue what is the Genus. But Matkel b'Genus, we see in Bishak, you begin with the shame of the Jewish people. It's a Machloek is Rav and Shmuel, whether the shame is Avadim Hayinu, or Mitchila Odeh Zara, and then you go into Vayotenu Hashem, we go into the Chayris. So the question is, why it's a night of our freedom? Why just get right to the good stuff? Why are we talking? So again, to fully appreciate being free, you got to know what a slave is. So too, Rav Selevan said here, to fully appreciate what Eretz Yisrael is, like anything else in life, you have to fully appreciate what you gave up for. And that's why specifically we have to. We need a Yom HaZikaron, we need a day to appreciate all what the soldiers, and not just the soldiers, all the Jewish people, anyone who's lived in Eretz Yisrael, is being there, and those many civilians who have given their life, many pre-1948, they went ahead and they fought, etc. So to fully appreciate what Eretz Yisrael is, as always, we have to know what we've given up. And hence, first Yom HaZikaron, and then Yom HaAtzmaut. So whether, so there's a whole halachic discussion in terms of whether one says Hallel on Yom HaAtzmaut. That's not my topic tonight. And therefore you have, obviously, whether you're going to say Hallel on Yom HaAtzmaut is going to depend on how you view having the state of Israel. So obviously, if you hold the state of Israel as a negative thing, like the Satmar Shita, then obviously the question is, you're going to say Slichos on that, not if you're going to say Hallel. So obviously you have to assume, again, and people confuse the Satmar Shita with, let's say, the Turi Karta. What I mean in the Turi Karta, I mean the wackos who put on full-page ads in the New York Times, either burning flags or joining in with the Palestinians, or those people went to Iran to join the denial of the Holocaust, even though they themselves weren't denying the Holocaust, but they could go to associate with them. They did it for them. Apparently they got $1 million for showing up. Of course, he used them for the pictures. But the bottom line is, you come together with the modern day come on Hitler. Obviously, that's out of the pale. That's not the Turi Karta. Meaning, that's not real Nazaric art, so it might be those people are out of the pale of Judaism. That's not an accepted shita. Satmar is an accepted shita. Might not be my shita, but the Divrei Yoel of Teitelbaum was a super genius Talmud Chacham. He wrote a whole shtickle on why he thinks it is. So he's entitled. He's a Talmud Chacham. He's entitled to his opinion, and the Satmar Chasidim should follow the Rabbi. There's no reason not to. And obviously, you have the Rav Kook Shita that it's more at times the Messianic age. It's the Schalta de Geula, and that's why you say you have the Tfilas of Medina Rashis Mikolaseinu. It's the beginning of the Geula. So certainly, obviously, they're going to say it's a day, it's a happy day, and then you can get it. So it's a halachic discussion in terms of whether you say Hallel at all. Do you say a half a Hallel? Do you say a full Hallel? Do you say Hallel with a bracha? And then, that's a discussion among Talmidei Chachamim, and there's room within all those shittas, within halacha. Some are more minority views, some are more standard. But, the point being is, those are all, so my point is, wherever your view is on whether, there's a lot of people get caught up in technicalities. Do you say Hallel or do you do that? The point is, everyone could, the point is, for me is anyway, it's not whether you say Hallel, you don't say Hallel. That's a halacha question. Speak to your Rav. And you could be the biggest Ohei Tzion and not say Hallel. A lot of times the more Tzion you are, it might lead to saying Hallel, but they don't necessarily go hand in hand. I mean, the Rav Soloveitchik was very against saying Hallel, not saying Hallel at all. He was against the whole Maisa. The way I heard it, and I saw it in thinking aloud. So people might have different versions of what Rav Soloveitchik says, but I heard it independent, and I read it again. I think he was in a minyan in Morg during my day. If I still have a minyan daily there, it's one of the dormitories. And Rav Soloveitchik used to live in the room right over there, right next door. So apparently it was a Bnei Akiva minyan he went into, and I guess he went over and told them, don't say. I don't know if they asked him, they didn't ask him, and he told them not to say Hallel with a bracha, something like that. And they went ahead and did it, and then, I don't know if he stayed in, and he stormed out. Either way, when he came to share that day, he gave a whole long discussion in terms, and he went to, at least the way it's quoted in the Sefer, and the way I heard it, I'm sure people might have different versions of what, maybe he said different things at different times, but the way he says it in thinking aloud is that he's against full Hallel with the bracha. He says, you need a takana, again, this guy's been, we give a whole share on it. It's really, the way he said, he's learning like the Netziv, that he holds, because really it comes out at the Machokas Kasim Sofer and Netziv on whether saying Hallel on the anniversary of a miracle is that a deraisa d'Rabbanan. So if it's a deraisa, I don't need a takana. I don't need someone to come along and tell me to put on tefillin tomorrow morning. So if you hold like the irony is, if you take the Chasim Sofer Shita, which the Hungarians who were they're more anti-Zionist, but if you take you have to follow the Chasim Sofer Shita to say Hallel with the bracha today, and if you take the Netziv Shita, it would come out, you need it. So the Rav seemed to be working with the Netziv. He says you need a takana. We don't have. So he says, I'd be okay with the Chatzi Hallel, no bracha. At least say a Kaddish after Shemona Esrei to show it's not B'Torah. So either way, the point being is so how is a halachic dispute? But the point, recognize again, if you assume Eretz, the fact that we have Eretz on the Jewish control, if you assume it's a good thing, then recognize it's a special day today. Whether Rav Kook, you want to say it's a Schalta de Geula Rashis Michoseinu, but you have a right to follow that shita. The Rav necessarily had, at least minimally, like the Rav thought that it's definitely a gift from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So many miracles happen. We have to recognize the Chasdei Hashem, and that's why you don't have to there's a discussion I think someone once told me that he said he considered himself modern author, whatever, but he went to speaking to Rabbi Norman Lamb, and he said, but I don't feel comfortable saying in the Tefillah Rashis Smichaseinu. And I think Rabbi Lamb said, I don't say it either. I said, you have to be a Navi today. How do I know it's the beginning? I think it's a good thing. but to say something, again, I'm not saying you can't say, I'm just saying that's what, so you could discuss saying it, and again, you could discuss saying the Tefillah Medina, again, you don't say it, speak to your posek, your Rav, and you'll come to your conclusions. You have to be tolerant of both sides. And again, so then even those, there are those that say, then there's a Misha Berak to say for the Chalai Tzahal. Even today, so then you'll have those who won't say the Tefillah Medina, but they will say the bracha for the, which to me I don't understand why you don't say. I mean, they say it's power. They say it's how. I wasn't having a discussion with them directly, but I was listening to someone having a discussion with someone, and they were saying, and he was asking, what about Hakarat Hatov? What about it? He says that the Tahal is a political thing, and he doesn't want to recognize it as part. For an individual person, like he'll say, he wouldn't say, I'm saying, so either way, again, but I think you can make a distinction between, so there are those who'll say the Misha Berach, but so again, those are different, but people get caught up in the technical details and lose the big picture. So whether you say, if there's a halachic issue, you're not saying it, so you follow your Rabbi, I'll follow mine. So I can't argue, you can sit there arguing over the halacha, but it's not, it's like the two, that's not really the issue. The issue is that the point is that everyone has to be tolerant of the other sheet. In fact, that's why some like to say, so Yom HaAtzmaut is specifically during Sfiras HaOmer. During Sfiras HaOmer, the time with Rabbi Akiva's student, Shoganogu Kavod Zeh Lazeh, that's the time we have to learn the lesson, and have to be tolerant for the one, the person who's saying Slichus on Yom HaAtzmaut should be able to be best friends with the person saying someone with a bracha with Hallel on Yom HaAtzmaut, but the two independent points, whatever your sheet is, but I think but those who hold that Eretz is a good thing, at least recognize it's a Chastei Hashem. Okay, so no Hallel, or however you want to give a share in Kedushas Eretz Israel today, however you want. I'm not telling you how you should feel, but there should be, it shouldn't just be a regular day. It should be something recognized. However you want to do it, within you want to be sensitive to the laws of sphere. However, whatever your halachic issues are fine, but I'm sure we can find a way where, assuming you want to. If you're just saying you really want to, and sphere is an excuse, then okay, so then there's nothing to talk about. But those who feel they really want to do it, there are ways of working it out. And that's what and that's what we see. That's why you don't want to see Karan first, and then there's the point, either way, whether you want to observe Yom HaZikaron or not, the point is we should have appreciation for everyone, any Jew or anyone who gives up their life anytime for the sake of Klal Yisrael, for the sake of protecting Eretz Yisrael. All the Torah going on now in Eretz Yisrael is because obviously we can't forget HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but as always we have to make a shtailus, and we have to thank, someone does me a favor, I don't say, well, I'm not going to thank you, I'm going to thank God. Of course it came from God, you might have been a shliach, but you still have to thank the person who did you the chesed. So if someone's protecting the land of Eretz Yisrael for me, or even land of America, whatever it may be, you still have to have Hakaras Hatov. And that's what Bereshit, that's at the beginning, that's how the Torah began, that the whole world was based on Reshis, on Bikurim, that the whole concept of Hakaras Hatov. And we have to give Hakaras Hatov ourselves, as the Abidjan points out. We know we have a concept for the Eino Baki, that he can rely on the Shliach Tzibor, and for the Eino Baki he can rely on the Shliach Tzibor and listen to the davening. But for us, we don't. However, we do have Chazaras Hashatz. Chazaras Hashatz, the Shliach Tzibor leads. However, there's one thing we have to do on our own. Bodim anachnu. When it comes to Hakaras Hatov, saying thank you, don't send the Shliach. You got to do it yourself. And that's why with anything in life, we have to have, Hakaras Hatov, and we need the gratitude for the people who are sacrificing. That's what Rav Selevan is saying. That's the concept. On a level of machshava, there's no halachic significance. You don't have to go bury the flag and any of that. But the concept that it represents all the Jewish blood, like the Tachrichim, all those who've given up their lives. And regarding why it's blue, so some say because it's Zeicher L'Lot Techeles. The Techeles it's a whole discussion today. There'll be a separate share we'll have to get into in terms of wearing the Techeles today. as I mentioned, you have you have different extremes on that shita. That perhaps you're chayiv to wear the tchelas today versus there's a 0% that that it is the tchelas today. But that's an interesting discussion in its own right. Losing a mitzvah for a certain point and then restoring an own mitzvah. How does that work exactly? I'm more interested in that issue than I am the specific techeles. But techeles is his own shia, but techeles will be a springboard for that. So either way, so techeles is blue because the blue is doma l'rakia, and therefore the blue represents, like Moshe Rabbeinu, you put the rock up during the war, you put your eyes up to heaven. The blue is supposed to remind us of the sky, and the sky is doma, and then we think of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So it's only because the gift of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us the Chasdei Hashem, He gave us the land. And Ramosha, I think, has a discussion about the Star of David in general. I think the first, because we find the Star of David, he said the Star of David on the Israeli flag, that could be just a new thing they just put on it. But the Star of David itself, we find in many shuls, like it's all over the place. It's a Kodesh Kadashim, like the Star of David. In fact, it was funny because somebody asked me like about a month ago, a non-Jewish person, what's the significance of the Star of David? So I just made up something anyway, but then I went up and I saw, like basically I was, Baruch Shekivanti to Rav Moshe. I made up what Rav Moshe said, but I will get to that in a minute. But it goes back to, I think, the 11th century. They talk about the Star of David. Interesting, some say Bar Kochva. It was the star, some say it was a six-sided star. That was the armor they used during the Bar Kochva rebellion. So either way, there is something, I don't know, there is something to the Star of David going back, we say in the Haftorah, Magen David, in the Haftorah, so the concept of Magen David obviously is around, but in terms of actually having the star, so I've seen it go back to the 11th century, etc. And that's what Rav Moshe says, perhaps the six-sided star represents that, God is all over. God is on all sides of us, etc. That's the part I made up. That that's what it represents. So we see, the flag itself represents the Mesiras Nefesh, all the Yidden who have given up their life al Kiddush Hashem to protect the land of Eretz Yisrael. The blue represents the Tchelas, Doma Rakia, that reminds us about, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the gift. And in fact, we'll conclude on this note, when people are probably wondering, Eretz Yisrael is surrounded by all these lands which are full of oil. Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq, and Eretz Yisrael is just a land flowing with milk and honey. What was God thinking there? He couldn't drop some oil into, even though now they're saying these shales over here, etc. And they say in the Negev, that's why Egypt wanted all that stuff in the Negev. They say that there's a lot of stuff there. But God couldn't plant oil fields in Eretz Yisrael? Like, what's going on here? All the other nations around them. So again, here's a perhaps, no one knows for sure this answer, but I heard a very interesting answer based on the Ramban. But the Ramban writes in Parashas Bechukosai that within the Tochacha, looks like it's a kola, but it's really a nacham, it's really a bracha. Basically it says that the Goyim are going to try to build up the land of Eretz Yisrael, they're not going to be successful. Speak to Britain, they brought the best scientists into pre-1948 to try to build up the land of Israel. It was a land full of malaria, swamps, they couldn't do anything. Let me ask you something. You think if it was a land full of oil fields, you think the Britain were going to give back this land to Eretz Yisrael? It was the Chasdei Hashem. He had to make it that it was totally desolate, and only the Jewish people have the ability to build up the land. And believe me, they tried. And now you look, I'll go back every year. It's just amazing. All the Intels, the Cisco, all the high-tech people are coming down. The Israel passed Canada a couple of years ago. The second biggest country, have the most listed companies on the NASDAQ market. So we see that was the Chasdei Hashem, even though we might think we wanted the oil, and now it's okay, we find the oil now. But the reason why we couldn't have oil is because we wouldn't have Eretz Yisrael today. So the Chasdei Hashem is He made it. It's only that the Jewish people could build up Eretz Yisrael, and there's some of the things that It's a good time to think about. This for Yom Ha'atzmaut enough. Just for today, just to get you thinking about it. You want to pick another day. You don't like Hey Iyar. You can pick a different day. Just thinking of the Hakaras HaTov. It's always appropriate. The Chasdei Hashem, giving us Eretz Yisrael and all the, no one's saying it's perfect. Nothing's ever perfect. But in terms of all the Torah that's going on, and focus on the good things, and we work on correcting the things that we don't like. So instead of talking about them, we have to go in and fix them ourselves. But that's what we have to remember, which is that every day is appropriate, but at least on Hey Iyar, which was the day, whether you like the day or not, that was the day picked. And therefore, it's a day at least to ma'or us and think about all the Chasdei Hashem and all the different people, all the Mesiras Nefesh of the people who have given up their lives, and the Chesed of HaKadosh Baruch and all things, but specifically now that we're Zocha, that we have Eretz Yisrael under Jewish control.